Next video will be the next installment for the wages system, and we're up to the French Commercial Treaty. On Thursday, June 9, in the House of Commons, Mr. Monk Gloucester proposed a resolution to the effect that no commercial treaty with France will be satisfactory, which does not tend to the development of the commercial relations of the two countries by a further reduction of duties. A debate of some length ensued. Sir C. Dilke, on behalf of the government, offered the mild resistance required by diplomatic etiquette. Mr. J. A. Balfour Tamworth would compel foreign nations by retaliatory duties to adopt lowered tariffs. Mr. Slag Manchester would leave the French to find out the value of our trade to them and theirs to us, even without any treaty. Mr. Illingworth Bradford despaired of reaching free trade through commercial treaties. Mr. MacIver Birkenhead declared the present system of free trade to be only an imposture, inasmuch as it was made up of free imports and restricted exports. The resolution was carried by 77 to 49, a defeat which will hurt neither Mr. Gladstone's feelings nor his position. This debate is a fair specimen of a long series of ever-recurring complaints about the stubbornness with which the stupid foreigner, even the quiet and stupid colonial subject, refused to recognize the universal blessings of free trade and its capability of remedying all economic evils. Never has a prophecy broken down so completely as that of the Manchester School. Free trade, once established in England, would shower such blessings over the country that all other nations must follow the example and throw their ports open to English manufactures. The coaxing voice of free trade apostles remained the voice of one crying in the wilderness. Not only did the continent and America on the whole increase their protective duties, even the British colonies, as soon as they had become endowed with self-government, followed suit, and no sooner had India been placed under the Crown than a 5% duty on cotton goods was introduced, even there acting as an incentive to native manufacturers. Why this should be so is an utter mystery to the Manchester School. Yet it is plain enough. About the middle of last century, England was the principal seat of the cotton manufacture, and therefore the natural place where, with a rapidly rising demand for cotton goods, machinery was invented which, with the help of the steam engine, revolutionized first the cotton trade and successively the other textile manufactures. The large and easily accessible coal fields of Great Britain, thanks to steam, become now the basis of the country's prosperity. The extensive deposits of iron ore in close proximity to the coal facilitated the development of the iron trade, which had received a new stimulus by the demand for engines and machinery. Then, in the midst of this revolution of the whole manufacturing system, came the anti-Jacobin and Napoleonic wars, for which some 25 years drove the ships of almost all competing nations from the sea, and thus gave to English manufactured goods the practical monopoly of all transatlantic and some European markets. When in 1815 peace was restored, England stood there with her steam manufactures ready to supply the world. While steam engines were as yet scarcely known in other countries, in manufacturing industry England was an immense distance in advance of them. But the restoration of peace soon induced other nations to follow in the track of England. Sheltered by the Chinese wall of her prohibitive tariff, France introduced production by steam. So also did Germany, although her tariff was at that time far more liberal than any other, that of England not excepted. So did other countries. At the same time, the British landed aristocracy to raise their rents, introduced the Corn Laws, thereby raising the price of bread and with it the money rate of wages. Nevertheless, the progress of English manufactures went on at a stupendous rate. By 1830, she had laid herself out to become the workshop of the world. To make her the workshop of the world in reality was a task undertaken by the Anti-Corn Law League. There was no secret made in those times of what was aimed at by the repeal of the Corn Laws. To reduce the price of bread and thereby the money rate of wages would enable British manufacturers to defy all and every competition with which wicked or ignorant foreigners threatened them. What was more natural than that England, with her great advance in machinery, with her immense merchant navy, her coal and iron, should supply all the world with manufactured articles, and that in return the outer world should supply her with agricultural produce? corn, wine, flax, cotton, coffee, tea, etc. It was a decree of Providence that it should be so. It was sheer rebellion against God's ordinance to set your face against it. At most, France might be allowed to supply England and the rest of the world with such articles of taste and fashion as could not be made by machinery, and were altogether beneath the notice of an enlightened mill owner. Then, and then alone, would there be peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Then all nations would be bound together by the endearing ties of commerce and mutual profit. Then the reign of peace and plenty would be forever established, and the working class. To their hands they said, "There's a good time coming, boys. Wait a little longer." Of course, the hands are waiting still. But while the hands waited, the wicked and ignorant foreigners did not. They did not see the system by which the momentary industrial advantages possessed by England should be turned into means to secure to her the monopoly of manufactures all the world over and forever, and to reduce all other nations to mere agricultural dependencies of England. In other words, the very enviable condition of Ireland. They knew that no nation can keep up with others in civilization if deprived of manufactures, and they are brought down to be a mere agglomeration of clodhoppers. And therefore, subordinating private commercial profit to national exigency, they protected their nascent manufactures by higher tariffs, which seemed to them the only means to protect themselves from being brought down to the economical condition enjoyed by Ireland. We do not mean to say that this was the right thing to do in every case. On the contrary, France would reap immense advantages from a considerable approach towards free trade. German manufacturers, such as they are, have become what they are under free trade, and Bismarck's new protection tariff will do harm to nobody but the German manufacturers themselves. But there is one country where a short period of protection is not only justifiable but a matter of absolute necessity: America. America is at that point of her development where the introduction of manufactures has become a national necessity. This is best proved by the fact that in the invention of labour-saving machinery it is no longer England which leads, but America. American inventions every day supersede English patents and English machinery. American machines are brought over to England, and this in almost all branches of manufactures. Then America possesses a population the most energetic in the world. Coalfields against which those of England appear almost as a vanishing quantity, iron and all other metals in plenty. And is it to be supposed that such a country will expose its young and rising manufactures to a long protracted competitive struggle with the old established industry of England, when by a short term of some 20 years of protection she can place them at once on a level with any competitor? But, says the Manchester School, America is but robbing herself by her protective system. So is a man robbing himself who pays extra for the express train instead of taking the old parliamentary train 50 miles an hour instead of 12? There is no mistake about it. The present generation will see American cotton goods compete with English ones in India and China, and gradually gain ground in those two leading markets. American machinery and hardware compete with English makes in all parts of the world, England included, and the same implacable necessity which removed Flemish manufactures to Holland, Dutch ones to England, will ere long remove the centre of the world's industry from this country to the United States. And in the restricted field which will then remain to England, she will find formidable competitors in several continental nations. The fact cannot be longer shirked that England's industrial monopoly is fast on the wane. If the enlightened middle class think it is their interest to hush it up, let the working class boldly look it in the face, for it interests them more than ever their betters. These may for a long time yet remain the bankers and moneylenders of the world, as the Venetians and the Dutch in their decay have done before them. But what is to become of the hands when England's immense export trade begins to shrink down every year instead of expanding? If the removal of the iron shipbuilding trade from the Thames to the Clyde was sufficient to reduce the whole east end of London to chronic pauperism, what will the virtual removal of all the staple trades of England across the Atlantic do for England? It will do one great thing. It will break the last link which still binds the English working class to the English middle class. This link was their common working of a national monopoly. That monopoly once destroyed, the British working class will be compelled to take in hand its own interests, its own salvation, and to make an end of the wages system. Let us hope it will not wait until then. And that ends that instalment of the wages system.